Hello, members, and welcome to the special council meeting held here today. Members, as normal, I'm going to pass on now to John the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon, members. To all members of Derry City and Strabane District Council, you're hereby summoned to attend the special meeting of the Council to be held today, Friday, the 11th of February, remotely at 2 o'clock. And starting, as always, with the roll call, Alderman Breslin. Alderman Breslin. Alderman Devaney. Alderman Devaney. Alderman Guy.
Here, John.
Alderman Hussey. Alderman Hussey. Alderman Carrigan. Alderman Carrigan. Alderman McClintock.
Here, John.
Alderman McCready. Alderman McCready. Alderman Ramsey.
Here, John.
Alderman Wark. Councillor Jason Barr. Councillor Jason Barr. Councillor Raymond Barr. Councillor Raymond Barr. Councillor John Boyle.
Here.
Councillor Michaela Boyle.
And Shaw, John.
Councillor Sean Carr.
Here, John.
Councillor Cusack. Councillor Cusack. Councillor Dobbins.
Here, John.
Councillor Donnelly.
John, Councillor Donnelly's asked me to convey his apologies for today.
Thank you. Councillor Doyle. Councillor Doyle. Councillor Duffy.
And Shaw.
Councillor Edwards.
And Shaw, John.
Councillor Farrell.
Here.
Councillor Ferguson.
Here, John.
Councillor Fleming.
And Shaw, John.
Councillor Gallagher.
And Shaw, John.
Councillor Harkin. Councillor Harkin. Councillor Heaney.
Shaw, John.
Councillor Jackson.
And Shaw.
Councillor Kelly. Councillor Kelly. Councillor Logue.
Oh.
Councillor McGinley.
Apologies.
Councillor McGowan.
And Shaw, John.
Councillor Maguire. Councillor Maguire. Councillor McHugh.
Shaw, John.
Councillor McKeever. Councillor McKinney.
Here, John. Here, John.
Councillor Mooney.
Here.
Councillor O'Neill. Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Riley. Councillor Senoy Barr. Councillor Senoy Barr. Councillor Tierney.
Here, John.
Thank you, members. I'm just going to run over those that I may not have picked up first time round. Alderman Breslin. Alderman Devaney.
Here, John. Here.
Thank you. Alderman Hussey.
Hi, here, John.
Alderman Carrigan.
I think he's trying to get in, John, if he's not in yet.
Okay. Alderman McCready.
Here, John.
Councillor Jason Barr.
Here, John.
Councillor Raymond Barr.
Here, John.
Councillor Cusack. Councillor Doyle. Councillor Harkin. Councillor Kelly. Councillor Maguire. Councillor McKeever. Councillor O'Neill. And Councillor Senoy Barr. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members.
Thank you for that, John. Okay, members, moving on the agenda 3, the step in the remote meetings. I would like to remind everyone who's in remote attendance that this meeting will be broadcast live via the Council YouTube channel and will be available for viewing to the public and media. The broadcast will also be available for repeated viewing at a later date. The broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with Council protocol, and members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting, or use chat facilities to highlight the request to speak. By participating in this meeting, you're contending to be filmed and to be in use of storage for those images for broadcasting or training purposes for the purpose of keeping historic records and making those records available to the public. A copy of the Council privacy notice may be found on the Council webpage. Members, moving on to agenda 4, declaration of members' interests. If you have any declarations, could you highlight now or put on the chat box? Thank you, members. Agenda 5, chairperson's business. I have no chairperson's business for today, so members, moving on to agenda 6, I'm going to pass now to Alfie for striking the district rate 2022 to 2023. Alfie.
Yep, thank you, Mayor. Members, the report is for you to strike the district rate for 22-23 in advance of the statutory deadline on Tuesday. This is obviously the last of a number of meetings which we've had to discuss the detail and issue and challenges around the 22-23 budget, and that has culminated in 2 options being brought forward to you for consideration in today's meeting. Option 1 would see a 3.44% district rates increase for ratepayers, which, when taken account of the regional rate, which is frozen, that would equate to an overall rates increase of 1.81%, an additional £16.97 per annum for an average domestic ratepayer. Option 2 would see more funding allocated towards our ambitious capital programme and would see a 3.75% district rates increase, and when the regional rates taken into account, that would equate to an overall rates increase of 1.98% or £18.53 per annum for an average ratepayer. These options, members, and the component parts of them are set out in the table in section 2.3 of the report for your reference. I'll just quickly run through the most significant issues. Firstly, members, like all businesses, we've had to absorb significant statutory pressures with waste tonnages and contract prices rising, inflation running at 5.4%, steep rises in our energy, utility, fuel and insurance costs, health and safety obligations, as well as the need to transform our digital services. Similarly, members, with Council providing employment for approximately 1,000 staff and staff costs accounting for almost half of our overall budget, we've had to provide for an estimated 2.5% pay award, which, as you'll be aware, is agreed nationally, as well as a 1.25% rise in national insurance costs. So, members, in combination, those standstill pressures place a 3.55% burden on our rates. Against that, we have continued to drive efficiencies and generated some further income from grants and our services. That said, members, we still continue to provide significantly subsidised access to our services such as leisure, cemeteries, car parks and tourism facilities in comparison to other councils in Northern Ireland. Since commencement of the new council, the recurrent efficiencies have now exceeded 4.1 million, and these, as you'll be aware, have been reinvested back into new services and growth. Positively, members, our rate base continues to grow, whilst we obviously face significant risk towards our non-domestic rates income, both as a result of the pandemic and also ongoing revaluation appeals. Our domestic rate base has shown strong growth over the last year at 2.07%. This obviously has a positive impact on our rates, but also places additional pressure on our services such as waste collection. We have continued to invest in growth and new services, with this year's rates seeing additional recurrent investment to support local community planning and the Spare and Future Search project, as well as non-recurrent investment to provide continued ESF skills support and rural capacity funding to support the local growth partnerships and the development of rural project external funding applications over the next 18 months. We continue to invest in our capital plan, and members have obviously been provided with an option today to include more investment as part of that plan, given the significance of our aspirations. Additionally, members, whilst we have budgeted for a recurrent rate support grant cut, we're hopeful that the executive budget will be agreed in due course, and that will reverse and enable us to provide even more further recurrent investment into our capital programme. Members, in the context of our £65 million budget, what has been and continues to be delivered on capital projects is very significant. We've already delivered on 72 million of capital projects across the district over the past few years. We have funding in place and are in the process of delivering a further 74 million of community investment. And on top of this, we have funding and resources in place to take forward our 247 million of significant and strategic and economic projects. Those include our City Deal and Inclusive Future Fund investment, and we're also hopeful for imminent government sign-off on the DNA Maritime Museum and Strabane Public Realm project as the first phase of delivery of that ambitious suite of projects. So members, on the basis of these issues and on the back of the recent detailed engagement, two options have been presented for your consideration today. As previously highlighted, the impact on average domestic ratepayers will range from £16.97 to £18.53 per annum across the two options. In relation to business rates, members, I would point out that 15% of ratepayers will still be fully exempt from rates. 66% of businesses in our area can avail of small business rates relief, ranging of between 20 and 50% of their rates bills, and a further 3% of ratepayers avail of derating relief, which will provide relief of up to 70 to 80% of rates bills. Finally, members, a very critical part of this process is that the Chief Financial Officer is able to confirm that our rates estimates are robust and reserves are adequate for the funding of council services for the year ahead. This confirmation can be achieved on the basis of the two options highlighted in the report and for the detailed options set out in section 3.2 of the report. In particular, members, you will notice our district fund is within the recommended parameters, and we have significant non-recurrent reserves set aside to provide for the continued risks associated with the pandemic. And we also very positively have just been advised of a further 1.86 million rate support grant allocation. A very welcome announcement, members, but as advised, it's a non-recurrent sum and doesn't impact on the rates proposals for the reason highlighted in the report, and we will bring forward recommendations in relation to allocating that money to projects in due course once our recurrent rate support grant allocation is confirmed for 22-23. So members, on the basis of the options highlighted and information presented in this report, you're asked to agree the striking of a district rate for council for the 22-23 financial year. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much, Alfie, and thank you to the officers there involved on the work. Members, I'm going to open it up the floor now. So obviously we have two options there, and I'll be looking for a proposer and a seconder on this. So members, the floor is open now. Anybody wants to come on? Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Mayor, for letting us in. We would be proposing option one. Firstly, I would like to thank Alfie and his team for presenting this, and John for the work they've done on the rates. And we've heard their concerns about cutting the rates any lower and the statutory pressures on our council. We appreciate both Alfie and his team worked incredibly hard to bring the rate before 2% last year due to ongoing pressures on our citizens and due to the pandemic, and this was down to the low impact on our staff and services. We do prefer option one, as this will impact on our residents the least and takes advantage of the regional zero rate, so not impacting on residents too negatively, but also allows our council to keep vital services running. So thanks again, Alfie and the team. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor McKenny. So members, there's a proposal there by Councillor McKenny. Could I have a seconder, please?
Mayor, I'm happy to second that proposal.
Okay, Councillor Duffy seconded. Okay, members. Councillor Barr.
Thank you, Mayor. Nobody can deny that these are unprecedented times that we're living in at the moment. Well, a recent survey by the Guardian there showed 1 million adults in the UK went hungry for an entire day because they couldn't afford to put food on the table. More than one in five families have already faced a heat or eat dilemma. Cost of living increases have led to food insecurity, with families cutting back on the quality or quantity of food to pay the energy or other essential bills. The average energy bill, such as gas or electric, is already up £700 a year. Grocery bills are up £200 a year. We have, and I've seen this myself, individuals and families, including working families, accessing the food bank and social supermarket. If we're sitting with money in reserve for contingencies, then that money needs to be used to help a community in crisis. As Councillor Harkins said at the last meeting, that rainy day has arrived. In Strabane, we have one of the most socially and economically deprived areas in the UK. And I want to add this, despite successive rates increases since amalgamation of Derry City and Strabane councils, I have not, with the exception of the Melvin Park, seen any capital projects of note completed in Strabane. This is the third strike on the rates that I've sat on, and every year we've heard about the public realm works in Strabane. And despite planning permission being approved in 2019, we've been waiting every year for these works to take place. So I can't support a rates increase this year. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for that, Councillor Barr. Councillor Riley.
Yeah, Mayor, thanks for bringing me in. And our group has discussed this in detail in terms of the paper for today, but also the papers that have been presented to us in the previous meetings. And thanks to Alfie and the council team for putting those together and continuing to engage in this process. But Mayor, in relation to the proposal that's been made by Councillor McKinney in relation to the option one, our group are still of a view that given all of the difficulties that are faced by the people across the council area in terms of additional rises on their income through oil and gas increases, in terms of the cost of living, in terms of the Bank of England base rate, and for those families that are paying mortgages, and all of the difficulties that our businesses have faced during the pandemic, trying to trade and not having that opportunity to get the income in and during the busy Christmas period, that it is really difficult for us as a council to be putting any level of increase on those businesses and those ratepayers. So Mayor, we can't support the recommendation as being proposed in terms of option one, and we would be asking that we take the time to look again at the appendix that was presented by Alfie on Monday in relation to the high impact savings, to see if there is, where else there is opportunities for this council to try and mitigate any increase. And I appreciate that work has happened to get us to the stage where we are now today, but I do think we have to take every opportunity to try and minimise the impact on the people that we are elected to serve. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for that, Councillor Riley. Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me in, and thank you to Alfie and the council officers for the continued work that they have done and are involved in bringing us a rates paper that endeavours to provide us as elected representatives with informed choices around how we can responsibly look at our council finances, trying to find the balance between protecting residents from the increases that they obviously can't afford at this time during a global cost of living crisis, but also protecting the vital jobs and services that we as a council area have come to expect, and ensure that these still continue at a really high standard for our residents. Today could be a historic day, as this council was on track to strike again one of the lowest rates that we have ever struck since 1974. It would have been an unbelievable outcome, given that less than 2 years ago, we were still envisaging a 15% rates increase to deal with the impacts of COVID. This was owing to over £15 million of executive support since the COVID crisis began, including the provision of an additional 1.86 million within this year's rate support grant. We had a scenario where striking the rate is close to zero without reducing anything in terms of council services and not impacting on council jobs. The proposal that I have seconded in terms of the 1.81, which would have taken account of the regional rates freeze by the Finance Minister Conor Murphy, would have allowed our council to maintain the delivery of frontline services at current levels, protect the jobs of those council workers delivering those services, and also ensure that we could cover the statutory pay rises which are currently being negotiated with the trade unions. I am fearful that what is being proposed by Councillor Riley in terms of the higher impact savings that will have an impact on jobs and services, and we could potentially see the loss of vital council services and jobs of people working within our council area. I do worry. Now our time is running out. We have until Monday. I would like to see the proposals that the SDLP is going to bring forward in terms of the higher impact savings, because in my view, we are putting at risk people's jobs, we're putting at risk people's services, and we are putting at risk the capital projects that are really important to our council area in terms of Templemore Sports Complex, Riversdale Sports Complex, and other city deal projects, community centres, play parks. I am concerned at the direction of travel. I know that we are in a cost of living crisis, and I had been hopeful that the work that had been undertaken by Alfie and by his team had taken us to a place where we were sitting with the lowest possible rates increase, protecting jobs, services, and hope for the future of our city and district. I am content to continue with the proposal that's on the table. I am concerned with the direction of travel, though. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Alderman McClintock.
Thank you, Mayor. And can I say on behalf of the DUP, a very big thank you to Alfie, to John, and to all the team for the tremendous amount of work that they have put in to get this process to where we are today. And I think that it is credit to you that we have now got a proposal in front of us of 1.81, which is makes a difference of £16.97 a year to the average householder. I think this is a responsible position to take. We have to be mindful that a large proportion of our rates does go to staff pay awards, and we do have 1,000 staff to look after within our council, and I would be very keen. We do value them, and obviously we do have an obligation to pay the rises that are due to them. And I would be very, very concerned that by striking any lower rate, that we would put those jobs in jeopardy. Our staff are our greatest asset, and we have to remember them, and we have to make sure that those awards are covered for all of our staff, and we don't have to make redundancies there. We also have a duty to those who we represent as well, to make sure that services are not cut. We have come through a very, very difficult time. COVID, it's not quite over, but hopefully we're getting to the end of it. It has had substantial impact on our services. And as we go forward, we are mindful that we do have a very ambitious capital programme that we still want to see realised. We have already completed a massive amount of the programme, but we have much more to do still. And I think that we have to be responsible, we have to be prudent, we have to realise that we have got an increase recommended of a very low 1.81, which is the one that we will be supporting. we do think that it's very prudent that we accept this, that this isn't the time for any stunts or electioneering. We have to be responsible and look after the best interests of our constituents, our staff, and all those who are dependent on services from council. So we will be happy, Mayor, to support the proposal before us today for 1.81 impact on our residents, bearing in mind also that the businesses, many of the businesses have either full exemption or are eligible for business relief or are derated. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Alderman McClintock. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Mayor, and a very sincere and thanks to Alfie and the team for a tremendous amount of work that has been done over quite a few months now, and I'm sure from Alfie's perspective that's a month's engagement with us, but I'm sure from Alfie and the department's perspective a lot of background work, even probably from the last time rates were set. Mayor, within the report that we have received from Alfie, I'm sure members are aware of the table of projects completed, where the contribution from council to those projects, that's aside from other outside funding, amounted to 37.1%. If I examined, and I did examine, cursory examination of all of the projects, looking at those in Spurn, Derg and Fawn, of the 101 projects, I think there's 25 of them were in those 3 rural areas. The expenditure amounted to 2.5 million from council out of 37.1 million. That represents 6.8% of expenditure, capital project expenditure over the period. Now, that is far from representative of the population demographics throughout our council area. It represents a tremendous deficit of expenditure on capital projects in our rural areas. That is something that this council has to grasp, be aware of, and start to redress that deficit that exists. We're not asking for multi-million-pound projects. We're asking for an equity of treatment in the rural areas. With regard to rates rises, people I'm talking to say, right, okay, rates is, it's something you have to pay, but it's something that you expect to get benefit from as well. There is service benefit, and that has been highlighted in the basic needs of council. But over and above those basic needs of council itself, council propagates capital projects, and they are not reflected in what is evidenced in the rural areas. And it's time we did that. The option 2 presented us with the opportunity of developing further capital for use by this council. And there was a suggestion at one stage that would enable a lot of the outstanding projects that exist to perhaps be looked at. And many of those, at least 50% of them, are in the rural areas. Mayor, I'm personally in favour of option 2, and I speak as a ratepayer, a double ratepayer, both the householder and the business owner, because, as I said, the people that I'm talking to, they understand you pay rates, but they also have an expectation that there will be benefit accrued to them from the payment of those rates. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for that, Alderman Hussey. Commissioner Gallagher.
Thank you, Mayor, for letting us in. I'll not be supporting either option. Everyone gets put to the floor. But I'll start out by just thanking Alfie and the team for putting together the reports and the hard work has led up to that, and they're very detailed reports. But you see, when we get into this chamber, on numerous occasions and numerous meetings, what we hear about is a lot is about the recurring costs for council, and the recurring costs, and these were recurring costs, and these were recurring costs. Never have I heard it discussed around the recurring costs of householders, of ratepayers. And when we look at very recently people talking about the high cost of living crisis, and people in Strabane have been living in high cost crisis for years, and they're paying rates, and they're a working poor, and bills is coming in, and bills is coming in, and people here in this chamber will talk about it's only a small rise, it's only this, and it's only that, and it's only 20 quid, or it's only this, it's only 18, it's only 15, whatever, and minimize that cost, that it's not very much. But the reality is, for some, this 18, 20 pound will be double. And it's 40 pound, and it's a 40 pound bill coming in on top of a big rate. It's 40 pound coming in on top of high cost of living, of high cost of food, high cost of heat and light. And what we're doing is we're guilty of driving people, the working people, into poverty. And that's what we're doing. And we should also consider in this chamber, when we talk about having to raise 75 million quid to run this council, if we're talking about that and we start driving people into poverty that can't afford to pay, then in a year, and 2 years, and 3 years, we won't have anybody to collect the base off our rates. So we see when we talk about, and Martin talked about it, about looking at other costs within council, let's look at the big projects that our ratepayers get very little for. And we talk about the millions, and I've said it before, the millions going to the airport, hundreds of thousands going to visit Derry, that doesn't impact in Strabane, and the rural Strabane. The pet projects coming from the PCSP that has no impact at all, that we well know has no impact at all. And we see big hundreds of thousands going to the likes of the Millennium, where working class people can't get access to because of costs. Then we have to say, let's look at them big ones and get rid of them. And let's look at addressing the high cost to our working people who are paying rates, who are getting driven into poverty. We should not be supporting a rate rise, none whatsoever. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for that, Councillor Gallagher. Members, I see no further speakers. So what I'm going to do now is pass it over to John to take us through a vote on option 1 that was proposed by Councillor McKenna, and seconded by Councillor Duffy. Can we get that on the screen, option 1? Go ahead, John.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members. Alderman Devaney.
For.
Alderman Guy.
Against.
Alderman Hussey.
Against.
Alderman McClintock.
For.
Alderman McCready.
Against.
Alderman Ramsey.
For.
Alderman Work.
For.
Councillor Jason Barr.
Against.
Councillor Raymond Barr.
Against.
Councillor John Boyle.
Against.
Councillor Michaela Boyle.
For, John.
Councillor Carr. Councillor Carr. Councillor Dobbins.
Against, John.
Councillor Duffy.
For.
Councillor Edwards.
Against, John.
Councillor Farrell.
Against.
Councillor Ferguson.
For, John.
Councillor Fleming.
For, John.
Councillor Gallagher.
Against.
Councillor Heaney.
For, John.
Councillor Jackson.
For, John.
Councillor Logue.
For John.
Councillor McGowan,
For John.
Councillor Maguire,
For.
Councillor McHugh,
For John.
Councillor McKinney,
For John.
Councillor Mooney,
Against.
Councillor Riley,
Against?
Councillor Tierney.
Against.
Thank you, members. Members
John,
involved.
sorry, I couldn't get in. I was having difficulties here. Against Sean Kerr.
Sorry, John. Councillor Lillian Senoid Bar. Against.
Just a moment. Councillor Carr against. Councillor Sinoy Barr against.
John Alderman Kerrigan here. I'm on the phone. I'm for. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, closing the vote now and about to count. Thank you. Members, I've recorded 17 for and 14 against.
Okay, members, there you are. That passes. Okay, members. Moving on now with agenda 7, the minimum revenue policy. Am I passing that on to you, Alfie? I'll take back here, members. I'm just going to pass back now to the Chief Executive.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Members, I have to confirm the rate statement. So as you know, it's a relatively lengthy statement that I have to read out for the record. As Chief Financial Officer, in line with Section 6 of the Local Government Finance Act 2011, I am required to report on the adequacy of Council's reserves for a financial year. With due regard to Council's in-year positive financial position, the significant support received from Government, the contingency funds earmarked for financial risks associated with the COVID pandemic, and Council's current general fund balance of 5.186 million, I confirm that this reserve will be adequate for the financing of Council services for the year 2022-23 and is in line with the Department for Communities guidance of between 5% and 7.5% of the net operating expenditure. Further to this, and having considered the detailed report of the Lead Finance Officer on the rates estimates for the year ending 31st of March 2023, I confirm that the Council today hereby 1. Approves the rates estimates for the year ending 31st of March 2023, totaling £67,963,958 and authorises the expenditure incurred in the said estimates. And 2, under and by virtue of the powers contained in Section 3 of the Local Government Finance Act Northern Ireland 2011 and Section 112 of the Local Government Act Northern Ireland 2014, and by other acts and orders hereunto enabling, makes and fixes a district rate of 32.0193 pence in the pound for non-domestic properties and of 0.5279 pence in the pound for domestic properties on the rateable value of every hereditament in the district, as the respective amounts required to be made by means of each rate in respect of the year ending 31st of March 2023. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members.
Thank you for that, John. Okay, members, moving on now to agenda 7 for the minute review of the provision of policy. Can I pass on to Alfie, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Members, this report is for you to approve our minimum revenue provision policy for 22-23. It's a statutory requirement as part of our rates process, and essentially, in simple terms, members, it really is how we charge loan repayments to our income and expenditure account and ensure that debt is repaid over a period that is reasonably commensurate with that over which the capital expenditure provides benefits. We have a number of options available, but the policy is basically proposing that there's no changes from what we previously do. We use the annuity method, which means that we charge to the income and expenditure account evenly each year, which makes it easier to estimate our rates as opposed to fluctuating charges each year. So that's why we propose the annuity method. So members, as noted in the capital strategy, we set aside 14.65% of our budget with respect of minimum revenue provision and loan interest, and you're asked to consider and approve the policy as presented. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for that, Alfie. Okay, members, with agenda 7, I would need a proposer or seconder, please.
So proposed, Alderman Devaney.
I'll second. Barr.
Thank you, Alderman Devaney and Councillor Barr. Okay, members, moving on to agenda 8. Alfie?
Yeah, thanks again, Mayor. Members, the final report today is for you to approve the prudential indicators for the financial year ahead. Again, this is a statutory requirement as part of our rates and is in place to ensure our capital investment plans are affordable, prudent and sustainable. And as part of that, we're required to set a number of indicators around affordability, prudence and treasury management. So we have prepared prudential indicators on that basis, and they're attached at Appendix 1. Obviously fairly complex, members, but just pick out the key points. So the borrowing at 31st of March 21 of Council is 43.5 million. Obviously there's a lot of capital expenditure in progress at the minute, as you would have seen in the original rates report on those substantial amount of projects that are in progress. So we're proposing that the authorised limit for external debt for the year ahead to ensure that expenditure can be financed is 56 million, and that's fully affordable within our loan charge provision. Members, you'll see that obviously this relates to the ambition within our capital programme, and as I previously mentioned today, 72 million has been delivered, a further 74 million is in progress, and a further 247 million is now being actively developed through for strategic and economic projects, and we have further ambitions over and above that. So members, the other key points, our treasury management policy, which we approved last year, included provision to use surplus cash that we have to replace the need to borrow in the short term, and we're proposing that that continues for the 22-23 year, given the significant loan interest savings that it has accrued us. These borrowing levels, members, in this report are obviously based on our currently funded programme of investment, and once our funding strategy for the remaining targeted aspirations is achieved, those forecast borrowing levels will obviously increase significantly. So members, the indicators are, as presented, are affordable within the amount we've set aside within our rates, and on that basis you're asked to approve the indicators for 22-23. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you once again, Alfie. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'm going back to the previous subject that I concentrated on during the rates process. Question to Alfie. With regard to Table 3 of community and statutory projects not yet fully funded, there are a considerable number of play areas within that, and I mean, that's a concern right across the chamber. Alfie, how deep, if any, or how far do you see us getting into Table 3 projects that are not yet fully funded within the current capital provision that would be available to Council? Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Alderman Hussey. So as you know, within the rates approved today, we have set aside an additional recurrent sum of 150k. That obviously, how much that will fund will depend on the nature of the project and the revenue implications of the project, etc. So I would be confident in saying that that would fund at least £1 million of capital expenditure. So really, I suppose what the rates today was about trying to build up our capital provision as much as we can. And obviously, should we get a positive outcome in relation to recurrent rate support grant in due course, that would add to that further. So officers are, I suppose, now that we've confirmed our budget for the year ahead, what we'll be doing is bringing reports into the Capital and Corporate Projects Planning Group with a view to progressing some of those projects within the confines of the amounts that I've just clarified. So that those meetings will obviously be happening now in the coming weeks, now that we have our rates confirmed. So it's a minimum of 1 million capital investment that's included within today's rates proposals. Thank you.
Mayor, if you'll allow me just a quick response back on that. Thank you, Alfie, and can I just say that I think there's an urgency to begin to address some of these issues, and I hope that the working group will convene at an early time to start and address these issues that I've mentioned. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Hussey. Okay, members, I will need a proposer and seconder for Agenda 8.
So proposed, Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Alderman Devaney. Seconder, members.
I'll second it, Mayor being Jason Barr.
Thank you, Councillor Barr. Okay, members, that brings our meeting to a close. So it does. On behalf of myself, I want to thank all the officers. I want to thank Alfie and the team, and I want to thank all the council staff for the months of hard work on this here. And it's obviously been a challenging time, and I really want to thank everybody. But in conclusion, too, the Great District rate here will increase the continued driving growth and investment in the city and region, ensure continued across all the council's frontline services. So members, on behalf of myself today, I want to wish you all a good weekend and thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Mayor. Perfect.